The Wheel on the School, Chapter 4, Jella and the Farmer, Part 2. The big clock in the tower was now just past 12 when they all were gathered in the schoolyard, and the teacher looked at each one of them in turn. A bow, a baby carriage, 2 bundles of hay, but no wagon wheel? The teacher looked at Akka. And what did you find, Akka? A crock with sauerkraut? Akka said somberly. But I didn't bring it here. I didn't bring it because it would be of no use to the storks. I didn't find anything at all, Lina said hastily. The teacher looked at the bundles of hay. Why did you bring hay? He asked Pierre. Well, we thought if somebody had found a wheel, Pierre said vaguely, the hay might help the storks to start a nest? Dirk nodded. Yes, that's what we thought, he said hastily. And you brought a baby carriage, Elka? Why? I brought it for the wheels, Elka said. I suppose I didn't really think they were big enough. I guess they were just the nearest thing to a wagon wheel that I could find. My mother let me have it, he explained. Since she said I was her last baby, definitely, and me going on 12, some baby, Jella said. Ha! Then we've got nothing, Lina said softly. They all stood in an unhappy little circle in the schoolyard. They were so disappointed they did not look at each other. Somehow, they all seemed to stare at the silly baby carriage. Pierre and Dirk stood there with their foolish armloads of hay. Pierre suddenly stepped up and shoved his hay into Elka's baby carriage. In obvious relief, Dirk shoved his armload on top of Pierre's. There stood the baby carriage, with hay sticking out of it in every direction. Then nobody was looking at the baby carriage, and all eyes turned up. Then, above the dike, high in the sky, high, white, huge wings flapping, 2 storks appeared from over the sea. Over the tower the storks winged still higher. They flew high, flew straight, didn't dip down for Shora, did not even pause or circle. Then 2 white winged dots disappeared fast in the enormous blue sky. Soon they were gone. Slowly all the eyes came back down. All were staring at the baby carriage again. Elka's face became red. He muttered something that nobody understood, grabbed the baby carriage, and shoved it disgustingly into the far corner of the schoolyard. Now, if we only had a goat, Akka said, looking at the tuft of hay that had spilled out of the baby carriage and over his wooden shoes. No one laughed, and Akka wasn't smiling. No one said a thing. They were so quiet they could hear Lina swallowing hard a couple of times. That was the trouble with being a girl, Lina thought. You wanted to cry at things like this, but boys just looked at you angry and stubborn and disgusted. Suddenly, Lina didn't swallow anymore, didn't want to cry anymore. She was angry. Jella said it all for them. Look, he savagely told them all, we can't mess around with bows and baby carriages and play in hay and fool around any more. He took his bow and slung it hard toward the corner with the baby carriage. Somehow it caught in the hay sticking out of the baby carriage, but Jella did not bother to notice it. Look, he said, with the storks here, we've got to hunt for just 1 wheel, and we've got to hunt hard. Jella was angry with himself and everybody else too. Jella is right, the teacher said, and I'm glad you all realize it now. However, we didn't really expect to find a wheel in Shora. Those are only the first 2 storks we have seen, so we shouldn't get too disappointed. Nevertheless, from now on, the storks will be coming by twos, and they'll be winging over Shora in flocks, and there's so little we can do to attract a couple of them to Shora. All we can do is find a wheel and put it up. The rest is up to the storks. But that little that we can do, we should do promptly. After that, we can play. We'll really hunt, they solemnly promised. Fine, then we'll start in again right after lunch, said the teacher. There are 5 roads spreading out from Shora. You boys will each take a road. Lina, you will take the dike. The dike, Lina said. Yes, I know there isn't much chance of a wagon wheel being on the dike, but from the dike you can see all the little side roads and lanes and isolated farmhouses that lie between the roads that the boys are taking. You can cover those, while the boys each search every house and barn along their roads. How far do we go? Elka asked. As far as it takes to find a wheel, Jella answered for him, before the teacher could even say anything. I'll be in the school all afternoon and into the evening if that's necessary, the teacher said. So be sure to report to me when you finish your searches. If somebody finds a wheel, I'll ring the school bell. When you hear it, come back to the school immediately. Now everybody home for lunch. But don't forget, I still say look everywhere, where a wheel could be and where it couldn't possibly be. In spite of your disappointment in Shora this morning, the unexpected still always comes up to surprise us. It sounded hopeful again, and no more storks had appeared from over the sea. They all broke away and ran home as hard as they could. It was 4 o'clock Saturday afternoon. There was not a sound in Shora, except for 3 small children playing in the village square at the foot of the clock tower. There wasn't a child. The 5 boys and Lina were scattered over the countryside, looking for a wagon wheel. In the doorway of the school, the teacher looked down the empty road that stretched from the school into the flat countryside. This was a road along which Jella was searching for a wagon wheel. The road lay deserted. Jella was nowhere in sight. The teacher smiled a little to himself. Jella's really got his heart into it now, he told himself softly. And when Jella gets his heart into things, he's liable to hunt for a wheel into the next province. From over the school, high in the sky, 2 storks appeared again. They were winged away in rapid flapping flight. The teacher stood looking after them. The children in the countryside would see those storks too. Just so they don't lose courage, the teacher told himself. When the teacher looked down the road again, it wasn't empty anymore. Far away, a wheel came rolling down the narrow country road. A boy was rolling it. He struggled it into an upright position whenever it fell and rolled it on. That must be Jella. Only Jella was strong and husky enough to wrestle a heavy wagon wheel down a road all by himself. Jella had a wheel. The teacher half turned as if to hurry into the school to ring the bell. Better wait, he told himself. You can't tell what Jella may do when he has his heart set on things. No, I better wait. He looked down the road again. Now no wheel was rolling down the road. Instead, there was a farmer leading Jella to the school, and the wheel was gone. The teacher waited in the doorway of the school. They came closer, the unwilling Jella and the big, angry farmer. The farmer was leading Jella down the road by the lobe of his ear. He had something red in his other hand. It looked like a piece of red roof tile. The teacher waited. At last, after a long, painful march down the road, Jella was being guided by his ear across the schoolyard. Jella looked stubborn and guilty and angry all at the same time. He stared defiantly at his teacher as he neared the doorway. He had to hold his head carefully tilted against any painful jerks on his ears. The pinched earlobe really must be throbbing now. I didn't steal it, Jella said morosely as the farmer hauled him before the teacher. He says I stole it, but I didn't. I yelled and called all over that farm, but there was nobody, and that wheel hadn't been used in ages. It was even stuck in the mud because it stood under the drip of the shed. Why, it took all I had to get it loose. So long it had been standing there, and now he says I stole it. The farmer grimly let Jella talk. Now he faced the teacher. What goes on in this school of yours here anyway, he demanded. Teaching children to steal things from people? There I was, deepening a ditch at the back of my farm. I poke my head out while I can rest my back a minute, and there I see a wheel rolling down the road. I look at my shed, and my wagon wheel isn't in its place anymore, up against the shed wall. I see it's my wheel rolling down the road, so I run and jump ditches to catch up with this boy, and I still can't believe it. in broad daylight. When I stopped at the shed, sure enough, my wheel was gone, and in its place, all there was this." He shoved a broken piece of red roof tile at the teacher. On the tile, Jella had scratched with a nail, "I'm taking the wagon wheel to put on the roof of our school for Storks to build a nest on. We want Storks to come to Shora again. I'll bring it back as soon as the Storks are through with it. Jella Sharda." The teacher forced himself not to smile. The hot-eyed farmer was watching him every moment while he read. "Well," the teacher said slowly, "at least it isn't a downright thief who leaves a note and signs his name after he's taken something, and thieves hardly ever promise to return what they steal. So if we do teach them to steal at this school, you've got to admit we teach them to do it differently." He grinned good-naturedly at the man. "You can see Jella meant to return it." "No, I've got to wait for my wheel until storks lay eggs and make nests, and after the storks are through, I can use my own wheel again," the farmer said hatefully. "I need that wheel. I need my wagon only in spring and fall, but when I need it, I need it. In fact, I'd planned to put the wheel back on the wagon this afternoon, and there it went, rolling down the road." Well, the idea of his wheel rolling down the road made the farmer furious all over again. The farmer kept a watchful hold on Jella's ear. "If you would let go of his ear," the teacher said, "Jella won't run away, I promise you that. Then I can maybe explain how Jella came to take the wheel without your permission. I'm not excusing it, understand, just explaining it, because you look like a man who would understand. You look to me as if you were once a boy, just like Jella, a boy who, once he sets his heart on something, stops at almost nothing. Didn't you, as a boy, sometimes take something when you couldn't get it any other way?" Well, the farmer relaxed a little. He almost started grinning. But then he made a scowl. "Yeah," he said gruffly, "because I wanted a bow and arrows. All the kids had bows and arrows, all but for me. How I suffered, because I was the biggest of the whole lot. My mother wouldn't let me. She was afraid I'd somehow shoot myself. How, I don't know. I didn't even have a knife on account of my mother. I couldn't even make myself a bow and arrows. And here I was, the biggest kid, just as big and husky as this one." He looked at Jella appraisingly. "No, bigger. Well, I got the knife. Don't ask me how. Then I made that bow and arrows. Then I was happy. My grandfather caught me returning his knife. How he warmed my britches. Well, he could have skinned me with the knife. I was still too happy. I had my bow and my arrows." "Well, there you see," the teacher said. "And now you've warmed Jella's ears. And Jella still doesn't have the wheel he wanted so badly." The man looked at Jella's red, swollen ear. The teacher explained the school's great project of luring just 2 storks back to Shora, and the man listened. He nodded understandingly when the teacher finished. "I'll tell you," the farmer began, but then he looked at Jella's ear. "You better put a cold, wet rag against that ear, kid," he interrupted himself. "Yeah, I can understand now why he did it in all the excitement. But as I started to say, he can still have the wheel in about a week. As soon as I'm through with the wagon, he can have it till fall. After this week, I won't need the wagon again until fall. Not on my little farm." "That would be too late, wouldn't it?" Jella anxiously asked the teacher. "I've counted at least 5 pairs of storks flying over this afternoon. They've started to come so fast, there can't be a stork left in Africa among those rhinoceroses you were telling us about. In Africa, they live right among the lions and the hippos and the zebras," he explained to the farmer. "But here, they live right in our villages with us. Except Shora, of course," he said unhappily. "Yes, I'm afraid in a week it might be too late, Jella," the teacher said. He turned to the farmer. "Could Jella help you with your wagon work on your farm? It seems to me he owes you at least that for all the inconvenience he has caused you. And if he could help, it shouldn't take a week before you can let the school have the wheel." "It's a deal," the farmer said promptly. "I'll fix the wheel on the wagon as soon as I get back, and Jella can come and help me Monday or even right now. It's up to him." Jella stood thoughtfully feeling his throbbing ear. "Do you still know how to make arrows?" he carefully asked the farmer. "I've got a bow, but no arrows." "Oh, sure," the man said. "And there's plenty of elder bushes right along the ditch I was deepening at the back of my farm. If you want arrows, I'll show you how." He patted his pocket. "I've got a knife of my own now," he said with a grin. "Oh, I'll be there," Jella promised happily. "But maybe this afternoon I have to look some more for a wagon wheel. The storks are coming over so fast." He looked at the teacher for approval. "Suit yourself," the farmer said. He strode off. Jella tenderly pulled at the lobe of his sore ear and looked meekly at the teacher. "I didn't mean to steal it," he explained. "But there was no one to ask, and there was the wheel." His voice trailed off. "Guess I better look some more," he said lamely, and walked away. "Look, but don't take without asking," the teacher called after him. "Just pinch your ear if you're tempted, then you'll remember." They both laughed a little. Then Jella turned to go, and the teacher went back into the school. As Jella crossed the schoolyard, 4 storks flew high overhead. "Now they're coming by fours," Jella called to the teacher. Then he noticed that he was alone. He stared up at the storks again. Suddenly, he shook his fist at them. "Do we have to knock you down to get you to stop in Shora?" His eyes fell on Elka's baby carriage in the corner of the schoolyard. The bow lay in the hay. If storks wouldn't stop in Shora, maybe he could make them stop. Shoot them down with a bow and arrow. That might be the way to do it. Not kill them, just bring them down. Stuff them into a coop until there was a wheel up on the school. Then they'd have their storks in Shora. He eyed the open door of the school. On tiptoe, he stole across the schoolyard to the corner where the baby carriage was and grabbed his bow. He ducked through a hedge and by a roundabout way, out of sight of the school windows, set off across the fields towards the farm with the wheel and the alder bushes for arrows.